Welcome back, everybody. It's the Double L's, and it's Friday, so we get to have fun. We have two blue teams facing off today, the London Spitfire versus the New York Excelsior. But only one of these teams has truly risen from the ashes of the bottom of the rankings to kind of sit comfortably in the middle, and now are much more deserving of respect. And I think London Spitfire are very deserving of that.
Yeah, that respect has certainly been levied, Lemon. We looked at the predictions of a Watchpoint desk. Despite Custer's discordance caused with the desk comrades with the pick for the Florida Mayhem, a lot of respect has been put on the name of the London Spitfire, which is pretty newly found this season. Last season for the London Spitfire was honestly pretty tragic, Lemon. So let's have a quick look at the roster heading into this one and see who London Spitfire are going to be bringing out first as we head into our matchup. And to me, when I look at this, obviously Hardy stands out so much, but we want to look at everyone else on the Spitfire as well, in particular Sparker, who, as I talked about, last season was not a huge breakout talent. Sure, when he finally came of age, it was a little bit of an uptick for London Spitfire, but overall their season was tragic and honestly disturbing for a lot of EU viewers. But now Sparker has shown themselves to be a threat on so many different hit scan heroes.
Yeah, like before this patch, before the soldier nerfs, Sparker was the soldier guy. And I like that due to his young age, and he kind of was shy, but then started getting a lot more confident, was going on flanks with his Lucio, and was kind of a force to be reckoned with on the hit scan. But ever since those soldier nerfs, he's been at least out the gates, going back to his Cassidy roots from Overwatch 1. Now, of course, Overwatch 2, it's not the same deal. The flashbang, that's no longer there. Isn't this guaranteed kill on a Tracer? But I like that Sparker's experience on the Cassidy is still a threat to any Tracer, maybe specifically Yaki on the other side. But we're not going to control this week. It is a double push map. But Sparker also now in his second match has brought out more Sojourn, and I think that'll make him specifically more competitive against the other Sojourn players that are in the league.
Yeah, let's talk about the other Sojourn player on NYXL. We would assume, Lemon, that would be Flora. And Flora does have a wide gamut of heroes that he's enjoyed playing over the last couple of games. In our new patch for the Mid-Season Madness, we've seen Flora pick up Sojourn, pick up the Hanzo, and pick up the Ashe, and each of them brings something new and different to the table. The Ashe has the knockback with the Coach Gun, of course. Hanzo has reliable and consistent versatility from the always available wall climb, as well as a huge amount of shield damage that might be useful versus Hattie. And then we've seen over the last week how Sojourn can just explode, especially with the overclock, and become a real terror on the battlefield. Flora's got them all in his pocket, but the question is, can he make the right decision against the Comps London run?
And that's the question. When it came to New York's first match of the post-patch against the Washington Justice, Flora was leaning a lot more towards the Hanzo, which is not an incorrect choice because of Hanzo's shield break that you just talked about in the Sigma meta. A big win con is breaking down that Sigma shield so you can force them back. So Flora kind of brought that out, but I think they're just missing that executability. And now that ever since Flora's second match against the Paris Eternal, Flora has been playing way more Sojourn, and I think that's helping out a lot. Now, that's not a shield break hero, although you can charge up off the Sigma shield. Flora's job on the Sojourn will be to jump around the shield and really find picks for his team. As we've already mentioned, this is a double push week, so we're starting off on Coliseum.
Opening up with the beautiful Roman architecture, and while we have talked about Flora at length, Yaki also deserves discussion. It feels like, to me, Lemon, to not be needlessly cruel, Yaki seems like the only player right now on NYXL who really has a clutch factor. Against Paris Eternal, NYXL's loss, which was Paris Eternal's first win, sorry for the week-long spoiler, Yaki was at times 1v5ing. And trying his best to go toe-to-toe with the European squad, but at times it feels like the rest of NYXL can be absent from the map while Yaki's trying to do it all alone. I don't know if that means that Yaki needs a bigger role in the calling, that Yaki's target is one that gets a huge amount more focus, or if Yaki maybe needs to get more in sync with the rest of the team on their overall strategy to allow for the main thrust of NYXL to have a little bit more firepower behind it from Yaki's consistent damage.
Well, doors are open. We're about to find out on map 1 if New York Excelsior can at least make the result of Coliseum better than their last showing. Because last time, 107-38 against Paris Eternal wasn't pretty by New York, and we get to see some Orisa from Kellen. Now, we've barely seen this at all, at least on a serious take. Going to be about just shoving maybe Hadi back, while also honing in on the range that Orisa provides to maybe break down Hadi's shield before he approaches, but London are wasting no time. Hadi's shield's almost already broken, and Sparker has sniped down Yaki, and that was a big concern ahead for Yaki, bringing out the Echo against Sojourn.
As interesting as the Orisa is, one of the main weaknesses that we've considered about this hero, Lemon, is that Orisa has a lot of trouble controlling engagements, and that's why we're seeing Spark have so much time to charge up these railgun shots and deliver them before Kellen can even really make a fight happen. The thing is, while Kellen can control Hadi and keep him at arm's length using things like the javelin spin to get consistent knockback, as well as the throw to consistently get Hadi on the Hadi giving the Orisa question marks, it does mean that the rest of London Spitfire can pretty freely poke away with a lack of damage mitigation. This is brave.
Yeah, and I think specifically Hadi can roll against Kellen fairly well. It's just now it's free push for London at 50 meters and more. Finally, New York drop off the staircase, and Yaki flies above and assassinates too. So New York will end the push for now, but I'm really questioning how this Orisa is going to do.
I think there was a touch of ego stratting there from London Spitfire, with only one tank of his hanging out on the flank, and the rest of you are taking pretty open doors against this much poke damage from the New York Excelsior. It's rarely going to go well. Finally, the barricade is going to be in motion, and Gangnam Jin here has a amplification matrix to put on down. If you can get it across this corner, then you'd be able to create an excellent line of fire for Flora to exploit.
See that London have control of the bot. New York gonna distance themselves, use the Ant Matrix from Gangnam Jin, and it's mainly Gangnam Jin, and I think that's a Sojourner. Flora and Youngbung back there as Kellen just contests a bot, and there's the first Maywall from Backbone, and Hadi maybe temporarily isolates Kellen, but that shield was quickly broken, or that wall was broken down by the Ant Matrix and all the damage at range. So now there's the ultimate from the Orisa, and Hadi just gets to block that damage. If you have a shield up, it won't affect the Reinhardt, so that is the natural counter that Hadi has, as New York are now getting beamed down.
Owl's first Terror Surge, not particularly impressive this time, and I think that, oh, what is this? Why the trance? This could be a mistake, Lemon, but NYXL are coming back in now, and of course are all at full health. How do you answer? Hadi slam now, though. It's got to be Gangnam Jin with an Immortality Field, but to get that down, Gangnam Jin's got to make sure he doesn't get slammed. Has to stick to the high grounds and out of the effective range of that ultimate. Also, NYXL have lost control of Timmy, and Spark has fallen, which is a good bit of news for NYXL fans.
Yeah, just like a tempo transcendence, but here's an even better tempo. The Sound Bear engage from the London Spitfire, and Hadi shatters, but the duplicate of Yaki blocks that. And now he's shattering ghosts. He's seeing shadows in the back, not trying to relive any Coliseum nightmare that New York have gone through before. It's been tough for them to really find the composition that works for them when it comes to the New York Excelsior, but at least they clean up their backline, and London Spitfire Sound Barrier push really didn't work out.
They're coming right for him, Lemon. I want to see Gangnam Jin learn from his mistakes previously. Don't put down the Ant Matrix too early, while London Spitfire will be able to contest the barricade pushing bot from behind physical cover. What Gangnam did last time was not the ideal placement, and look at this. Down goes the window. Everyone can just scatter. Sure, it creates some space, but now Kellen's in a position to be crunched on in.
Yeah, London Spitfire were able to predict that Ant Matrix well. It's just Backbone's on the other side. He was hiding in the hallway, getting stunned up, but Backbone managed to stay safe because London Spitfire knew they had to walk up and take the space immediately, and they did so thanks to the Ant Matrix of Landon. And while New York were just not ready for this, they got caught by strays. Backbone found 2 kills during that Ant Matrix. So London get to finish off the rest, and it's still a 50-meter lead for the London Spitfire.
I really just want to see that Matrix with a second phase of an attack, you know? Force London Spitfire to make a disengagement with some other pressure, and then put down the Ant Matrix to make sure London Spitfire were engaging to useless positions. More push on the barricade, now getting ever closer to that first checkpoint, but NYXL can still snipe from above, and Kellen is getting close to that Terror Surge, despite its limited usefulness.
Yeah, it's as long as Hadi has a healthy shield and is gonna be in the front line, which Hadi does most of the time. Not sure what Kellen's gonna be able to do. I like this push. I wish it was a little bit further up so he could maybe get an environmental. But Floor has great presence on this high ground. Has already sniped 2 and making it a 3rd and a 4th. And we've been excited to see the rise of Floor on Sojourn.
Look at where Hadi was coming from as well, round the back. London Spitfire are making a habit here in the midst of these fights of having Hadi almost go rogue elsewhere. And the question is here, what can Kellen do to combine the Terror Surge's pulling in effect with something else? Maybe you could combine it with Stickies, not anymore. Yaki caught out early, and now Sparker's got themselves a little bit of freedom to operate.
Yeah, Yaki's still going to struggle against this long-range part of the map, and New York need to win just back-to-back fights, and it's just, there's no end in sight. But New York at least coming up on ultimates, so you're just, if you're a New York fan, you're wishing that that fight, they cycle those ults well, but London are going for the far push.
I want to see Terror Surge here combined with a copy on the Reinhardt. Drag everyone in and then cleave through them, slam them down with Yaki. Hadi's already in, and that's a very aggressive Blizzard.
And is there anybody that can stop the Spitfire? You got the Ant Matrix plus Sparker's ultimate, the overclock, while TikTok, New York, it's time to defend. Something here to stabilize is the healing, the transcendence of Myungbong. It's just really a safe space for New York, but there's an isolation wall. Kellen tries to run, but he can't hide. Hadi's in many room just always having access to the flank, and if New York don't snipe at range, New York are just not going to get out of this hole.
And Admiral still has the backup card here of the sound barrier. I need to see Excelsior get aggressive here with Kellen with the power drive, and after a power driver put down that Ant Matrix to allow for the additional damage. Flora's got to be careful. They could get assassinated here, but Landon's been isolated.
I love this dive from Kellen. Yaki's been trying to put pressure on those supports in the back, but Sparker's positioning just with the ceilings above him, it's made it so hard for the DPS of New York to access London. And with just a few picks, you thought that there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel for New York, but London Spitfire on map 1 have the full capture in their sights. Now Kellen is here. You got the zoning discharge shot from Flora as Flora tries to take flanks. Here is a Lucio May push on the right side, and New York need to coalesce on a target, and finally the kills are rolling in. But the respawn advantage for New York, I mean, you gotta thank that, but you're not thankful for 138 meters to 17.
London Spitfire overall, they had a great overall plan. They said, Landon, you're going to die. I'm sorry, you're going to get dove by the Echo and the Wrecking Ball. But while those two are on you, we're going to take a 3v4 towards the end of the map and get a huge amount of push. Look at the insurmountable amount of distance that NYXL now have to generate in order to take the lead here. Over 110 meters stand between NYXL and a victory condition where they've only got 1 minute and 50 seconds left.
I like that Yaki is at least trying to take some flanks through the middle of the map. That's usually his job on the Tracer. And I was almost wishing he went to Tracer because he's getting sniped a lot by Sparker, who continues to also diff his opposition of Flora on the Sojourn. So New York just can't seem to put a dent in Sparker's massive forehead and brain, so that London just continuously have first and second blood every fight.
Their engagement so powerful here. Sparker, if they can find themselves at the back of this bridge, would have an unlimited amount of range to work this overclock with. And will Sparker hit 5 gigahertz? Plenty of space, but this window's not in the ideal position to do a huge amount of damage. At this point, though, they're simply concerned with keeping NYXL bogged down, really.
Yeah, Yaki. I like that him and Kellen are trying to dive in the back, and Yaki is using the middle of the map, his Tracer routes to do so. It's just when you invest your flight as the Echo, you're just such in a dangerous position that you can't get out. And London are getting walled off by their own May. They're trying to take shelter in the apartment. Hadi said, you're trapped in here with me, but messes up his charge. And New York, I mean, they put out the fire, but half the ship is burnt down.
They have at least, Lemon, not invested too much in that previous fight. 4 ultimates on either side now. But the question is, how much can Myungbong do to mitigate the incoming damage? It has to be done in conjunction to try and take out Backbone's Blizzard. But the thing is, while people are frozen by Backbone's Blizzard, Sparker can one-shot them through Transcendence with the Railgun overclock headshots. That will one-shot a squishy target with less than 300 HP.
Oh, a nano onto Yaki. He's pressuring down Hadi, who's half HP. He still has armor. His team is on the other side, ready to wall Yaki if he gets too aggressive. But Yaki, he's smarter than that. And Kellen has been dealt with at range. Here's the Sound Bear in the Blizzard. Yaki's not yet frozen and uses the duplicate to preserve his own life. New York have to take this fight. It's overtime, but it's 17 meters to 138. New York are just hoping for a miracle that may never happen. Yaki still dives in the back and trades 1-1. That's the best case scenario for him, but Flora has yet to have really an impact against someone like Sparker. So London's rush continues to prevail, and overtime will go away shortly. There's only 2 members of New York Excelsior even alive, and eventually this will fall away. So London Spitfire dominate their map 1.
London Spitfire looking so clean here on Coliseum. We can see just how much have been scrimming these Ryan comps. That's exactly what we expect from London. That duo boost of Backbone and Hadi up into that apartment, it might not have worked out in the end, Lemon, but overall it's just not allowing NYXL a sense of safety in these high grounds. It's like, hey, do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior Chaddy on the Rhine? London Spitfire, while they did not make it to kick off Clash, Lemon, they are well on their way to qualifying for Mid-Season Madness.
Yeah, London even made some adjustments of their own, getting away from the Backbone Sombra, which they previously have whipped down on Coliseum, and went back to their roots. Some Mei and some hit scan, and Sparker continues to impress. Map 1 to the London Spitfire. We'll find out after this break what's next. Welcome back to the blue matchup. We got blues versus blues, but only one team is feeling real blue after that map one, and that's New York. Got absolutely dominated, 100+ meters to double digits. And New York even bringing out the Orisa, clearly trying to innovate, but after that, they're currently 0-3 on Colosseo post-patch.
I mean, the Orisa was interesting in that, like, when you're in position NYXL is, right, like 1-7, languishing quite a bit this year, sometimes it can be useful to lean into your own identity, and to a degree, that's what London Spitfire did. They didn't have the most glorious start to the year, but leaning into the Reinhardt style with the unconventional Mei, which a lot of teams had opted out of and thought was more of a thing of the past, more of a double tank kind of setup, has allowed them to catch out a lot of teams off guard. However, the Reinhardt is gone, Lemon. Poco has come in alongside Shaxx, and I've got some very fond memories of in Kickoff Clash when London previously played Route 66. Shaxx came in and absolutely dominated on the Tracer. This guy's got such a long competitive history on the old Time Demon that I think that NYXL may have to devote additional resources to trying to mark him as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Shaxx come in and just wreck some faces on the Tracer. My question is Yaki going to want to mirror that? I was kind of disappointed in his Echo choice just because of Sparker's just ranged ability of able to do damage to Yaki before Yaki can really say much. Yaki had some nice duplicates. You know, he did block a shatter. We give him a gold star for that. But I want to see Yaki on the Tracer to contest Shaxx, and I'm thinking that'll be on the menu. And I like some looks of New York of Kellen's Hammond to try and help Yaki get that backline pressure. But Kellen took also so much smoke. He was taking so much damage, and Kellen was also falling. So it's tough. It's tough for New York.
It is tough, and here I'm expecting to see London Spitfire be absolute menaces on the defense in particular. I think we're going to be starting off on the offense. But when it comes to the defense, one of the things we're going to be looking for here is how the Tracers work their way from the high ground onto a presumably quite vulnerable backline of the attacking double flank supporters, we'd have to assume, especially for NYXL. Because the Tracer are a lot harder to mark for the Tracer versus Tracer when they're coming from the high ground, so that initial engagement is where you are at your most powerful for someone like Yaki or for Shaxx, and that's going to need to be addressed by these players. Speaking of which, London Spitfire maybe having me on in the attacker spawn at the moment with an interesting mix-up. Shaxx is a very viable Widow player.
Yeah, you can always go for those initial snipes. At least we know that Yaki's on the Tracer, Flora's back on the Sojourn, and I think we were critical of Flora's performance of the Sojourn against Sparker, but I think just Yaki's lack of helpfulness, also of just getting also sniped down by Sparker, didn't really help the mirror matchup. Now Tracer, Yaki's gonna be able to have access to Sparker and provide multiple angles of assault, and Kellen on the Hammond is going to be great to assist with that, just to go past the shield. Because I don't think Kellen feels confident in trying to brawl that. You got to sleep right out the gates, which could have been just disaster for New York, but they managed to get away.
For those of you seeing the double flank support now with Gangnam Jin on the Ana instead of a Baptiste you usually see, this is because it provides more reliable healing to both Kellen and Yaki at range, where the healing grenades of a Baptiste are less reliable to hit on these fast-moving targets as they're further away. And it also means Gangnam Jin has a little bit more playmaking potential with the anti, which just missed.
We'll see how this works. Is New York getting some cart push? Or sorry, Spitfire getting some cart push. They're going to flank right side to see if they can get access to the high ground. Kellen has managed to get into the back line there with the Tracer of Yaki, but it's about New York being decisive on a target. I've never had a problem really with New York's compositions, but it's how they just don't fight. London Spitfire had time to do a whole 360 rotation around New York's defense, and now has Sparker sitting on New York's supports, and I felt like New York were in the positions to attack, but just couldn't figure out who, why, and when.
All of London Spitfire's comps, Lemon, they seem to operate on the concept of bravery beats all. Look at these two-man dives from Shaxx and Sparker. No dive tank, no problem. I've got a Sojourn, and you do not. Flora instantly evaporated by Sparker, and now Kellen's got to sacrifice his life to keep this cart contested.
I think at least Kellen got Mega, but Was too slow to recontest. There is still like a 5-6 second cooldown on the grapple, and looks like Yaki wasn't there to contest. So this is a very fast push by Spitfire. And New York, their whole issue is just cohesion, working together. And even just Kellen asking for heals and not being in range of his Ana, of his Zen. And of course, even with the Zen, it's very slow heals. So Kellen is taking too much poke for the positions he's taking.
Now the question is Yaki more concerned here with trying to mark Shaxx and therefore leaving the supports alone? It feels like at the moment from our POV that Yaki is undecided as to where to go, waiting for Kellen instead to make some space so that he can make a deeper incision without risking his life to do so.
Like Kellen's position around Saloon, and Yaki has access to the backline. There's the pulse, it finds Landon. No Transcendence to help that either, 70%. So London have only lost their Zen. You see that the Sojourn of Sparker's in safe position. He has that overclock too, but London have been able to flank through the left side, and New York support's got to take some kind of shelter. They're currently in the mega pack in the back right side. So I like these counter rotations from Youngblood and Gangnam Jin to stay away from Sparker as much as possible, because he's going to be gunning for them.
Now it's under Flora with the overclock to try and find a way to keep London Spitfire at bay. Ken looking to set up a big power drive here.
Oh, just right in the middle, and that might have been a counter shield match from Admiral to get out of the way. Flora has overclocked. He's found two. Make it a third. Drops down. Landed. Oh, Kellen had to go and steal it. Flora gets the finish, and that is Flora stepping up to the job and what New York need of him to do.
And Sparker actually used their own overclock as well. I think that may have actually forced the Nano out of Gangnam Jin, but I don't think that it's overall a great usage of the resources. Now there's not too much that can actually break through Myeonbong's usage of a trance, because otherwise you could have combined that with a Gravitic Flux to find multiple people trapped in the air and easy to kill. What an anti.
Ooh, big anti from Gangnam Jin, hitting 2 or 3. Good sleep on Poco to stop the Gravitic Flux, but New York, even with the Transcendence 2, they're more than stable, and Flores sniping away. I'm starting to see Flora just go toe-to-toe with Sparker, which wasn't the case back on Colosseo.
And London Spitfire not being able to hold any space with the remaining players is also important, Lemon, because it means that now Yaki can keep an eye out for people moving through. You can see currently he's hanging out in the cavern, peeking in. And if people are in these confined spaces, that's when Yaki is going to have their easiest time looking for a stick onto a more vulnerable member. And there's no thing that can really save them apart from Landon trancing if he gets stuck.
Shaxx, at least in the back line. London always have access to this left side. They can go up the staircase, see if they can lock down New York supports. But New York supports, like I said, have been playing in the back right and have been just counter-rotating away from London, making it hard for Shaxx to do much. Yaki Pulse, it doesn't stick, but Sparker still lands on it. Transcendence forced by Landon, but now London are just looking for a fight to take, but New York just counter-rotated away, and London's Transcendence advantage just fell away. Now Admiral and Poco are getting antied by Gangnam Jin, and that's a great fight for New York to take almost immediately. And Kelly is just positioned in the middle of the map where he can take a fight whenever he wants to pretty immediately.
The thing is, London are making intelligent raps here to try and deny this high ground, but they're being slowed down so much by the way that Yaki harries and harasses them on their way through, and that gives plenty of time, excess time even, for NYXL to be able to not only set up a safe location, but also set up nades from Gangnam Jin to allow for the eventual dives from NYXL.
Ooh, Kellen just shoved everyone out of the cave, pile drive them, and Flora was in the perfect position to capitalize. This is a brand new New York Excelsior. That was so hard to say. New York. And I'm a big fan.
I prefer the old New York, Lemon. But the new New York is just fine as well. NYXL now have themselves the overclock, but what can they do to stop London's push here again? It's likely going to be due to, once again, Kellen messing with their rotations. Think about this high ground that they're currently on. If Kellen rolls on through, they can easily bisect and split this party.
Yeah, as soon as London come out of cave, Kellen's gonna try and disrupt it. He's bananoed. He has the sustain to keep this pressure on, and he's right and above and kind of wasting time, but he knows that he doesn't want to take too much damage and be a risk. As soon as London, they poke out, there's the pile drive on the Sparker. Yaki gets involved. He has a pulse, but doesn't even need it. London, back-to-back fights. They've had 5 minutes for point B, and it's been shriveled down to 7 seconds ready to touch. Shaxx around the corner to do so. Yaki's on the chase down. There is the touch from London, so they'll have one more fight to get this going.
A 5-minute hard hold. All you need here is a good overclock, and that's going to put a lid on it, Lemon. Admiral almost has the rally here, and it's going to be popped in retribution for the overclock coming up, but there's some mines as well.
Mines will zone off London, but at least London have the resources with the rally. They're taking shelter in Saloon. That was Shaxx trying to go on the flank to kill Gangnam Jin and get sniped by Flora, the best babysitter the dollar can buy. But London, will they be able to do anything without Shaxx? Sparker on the high ground with Poco swapping to the D.Va to have some kind of high ground presence. But New York supports have been left alone for too long. Sparker's on the flank. He's already dealt with one and making it second. No more healing for New York as it's up to Kellen to keep this contested.
Kellen not going to have a good time going up against that D.Va. So much damage at close range, and Shaxx can move in to get that Inspire up time as well. Yaki plays amongst the propane, but I don't think an explosive performance is on the cards, as there is a pulse bomb ready to go, likely to go on to Kellen to just try and chunk down that tank and stop him from contesting. But at the moment, Lemon, oh, what a block.
Oh, Kellen is still there. Myungbong in the back. Gangnam Jin above, maybe looking for antis, and Shaxx not going to let it happen. A fantastic pulse on the Flora. Yaki's already used recall. New York are weakened for the moment, but they have not given up. And London have a chunk down Kellen, and they've removed any car presence that the defense had. So London, by the skin of their teeth, will go into point C.
Finally, it seems like London Spitfire had landed on the Baptiste and used that to make sure that Sparker and London could dive together onto some more vulnerable players. Gangnam Jin, in this case, was caught in a counter rotation on top of the mechanic shop with the Mega to make sure that that Ana healing would not be available for a majority of that fight. Yaki now with the Pulse Bomb. Where do you put it? Ideally onto Admiral, because after that, Landon's going to be a sitting duck for Kellen's dives, which have been getting more and more ferocious through Route 66.
Well, New York are already communicating well. I mean, they get an anti on the Landon, and Kellen immediately follows up. Yaki throws the pulse and stakes Admiral, and this has been fantastic by New York. And now you're just pulsing Yaki, so he has a little bit of damage mitigation and extra damage to finish off. Maybe Shaxx that's still left in the back, and any stagger kills is good for New York. 30 seconds left.
I think Kellen probably could have used that nano now, but patience is his best friend for the moment. Looking potentially for a pile driver and forces Shaxx off the high ground, or rather forces Sparker off the high ground, who gets consistently discorded again and again.
A transcendence from the defense of New York, hoping to hold on to Megapack's side. Poco starting to bully them off. Now he's getting the help from the rest, including a rally from Admiral. London are taking a ton of space. They force Flora off this dominant high ground of this American truck, and Flora is just gonna hope to sweep into the loving arms of some support, but has left Myungbong completely by himself, and Sparker will take advantage. London have paved the way from a 5-minute almost hold on point B to now inches away from C, and it's up to Kellen to contest. He doesn't have mines or health to really do much. He might return. Yaki was left to touch and just completely sniped away, so London will complete the map.
And Poco there really came into his own as a Sigma, not fulfilling the kill feed as much, Lemon, but as we moved into point C of Route 66, the topography started to favor that Sigma so much more, because it meant that London Spitfire had easy early access to high grounds using the staircase, and that means that they can't be surrounded. Poco's monodirectional shield becomes much more useful to block off Gangnam Jin's healing, to deny Flora these sight lines, because Yaki and Kellen are already getting forced off the dive angles that were so useful on the wider spread of B, where the Sigma can be surrounded and crunched upon. But credit to NYXL, on B, Kellen finally felt to me, Lemon, like the tank who was promised. This guy is an Element Mystic alumni, a legendary team with legendary scouting and legendary results to match, and thus far, Kellen has not lived up to that pedigree. But on that second point of Route 66, I saw that Element Mystic spark.
Yeah, I think New York agree with that, because they were even nanoing Kellen just to surround London, and just the way he was using the Hammond to displace London every time they left the cave, to pile driving multiple people, forcing even cooldowns out of London. Even if he wasn't pile driving nothing, you'd force Shield Bash out of Admiral, which is your get out of jail free card on your Brigitte. So I love this new look from New York. There we go. Unique New York. I gotta say it. Now, we'll see if they can pull it off on the offense.
Flora going to make an early scout here. And New York is actually sticking to the Ana on the offense here. instead of the Brigitte, which is going to be interesting. This does mean that Poco is going to be a bit of a healing deficit compared to Kellen. It means that Kellen can actually brawl for a touch longer than maybe a Wrecking Ball would usually do so, because of the amount of healing that can be brought through from the from the Ana.
Oh, that was a fantastic anti. Two finishes off Landon and got Admiral and Sparker low. Just already giving up space, while as Poco is still in the cave side completely by himself. At least he has ranged heals from Pax and Landon, but I don't even think they have access to him. And Poco realized too late, started backing out of cave, and Flora found him. So 5 versus 4 with no tank presence of the defense. London will have to touch, we'll have one recontest left.
And here you're forgetting just how good Gangnam Jin is at flex support. On paper, this should be NYXL's meta, Lemon. This needs to be the tournament where NYXL start racking up these wins, where they have Myeonbong on the Zen, Gangnam Jin on the Ana. This is their pedigree.
Cart meters away. Shaxx dueling against Yaki, but now hoping to remove Kellen, who is just causing so much chaos. And London, I mean, they're all split from each other. Even the supports aren't safe. Landon's getting pushed by Kellen and Yaki, and there's just no heals left from London, because London were not able to clap back whatsoever, no matter who was on the flank. So that's a great cap from New York, and they'll have about the same time that London had for point B.
Question is, will they be stopped for as long as London was? They don't share the same weakness of London from being crunched while playing as a Sigma. Instead, easier to try and control his high grounds. Kellen can get up there so easily and also knock people off them into more exposed positions where Yaki can try and get the follow-up. And check out Myeonbong's position here as well. Playing very far away from Gangnam Jin to make sure that you can't really cleave onto both these players at once, but it does mean that Gangnam Jin can potentially be cut off by Poco's shield.
Oh, there's the pile drive from Kellen. Didn't affect anyone. Shields up, baby. But it looks like London are just looking to surround the people from New York that are pushing the cart. Flora shows himself on the high ground and gets sniped by not only Shaxx, but also Sparker. So New York are down a very important DPS as Yaki hopes to go unnoticed. Gangnam delivers a nano to Youngblood just to keep him alive, just so he can generate the Transcendence. He uses it immediately upon earning it, just to reposition himself with the rest of New York. But this, like your disappointment expresses, I feel that way too. That got New York nothing.
Yeah, and also a huge amount of the uptime of a nano was wasted. Oh, that's a miss from Poco. Not a fan, Lemon, not a fan.
That's tough. Poco has had a few Griffitic Fluxes canceled, not able to dodge Gangnam Jin, who's been sleeping him with that. There's a Transcendence from Landon just to help London get real aggressive, and Kellen just hopes to escape into the shadows. He should not be fighting this. He has the Discord Orb on him, and maybe he got a support low, and Flora got to finish that off. Now London have no support, so it's a complete reset now from them.
Yeah, the aggression has kind of been turned around here. Poco does not have any healing to sustain him apart from the Mega Pack, so going to be a slow extrication from the scene of the crime as Kellen makes sure there's continual pressure on this payload and continual pressure on the high ground as well. If Poco can be allowed to exist here for free, that means that Admiral and Landon can get into safer positions once again when crossing over from their own high ground, and it doesn't look like they are going to get here. So once again, NYXL have problems.
Poco is also completely zoning off Gangnam Jin's position on the cave side that you're seeing off screen, so temporarily no heals for New York, but it doesn't matter when you do more damage. Another great pulse from Yaki, a double kill for the Tracer Man, and New York get even more push. They were already halfway to B, and now we'll be able to maybe fully cap. They are missing Gangnam Jin, so if London have a recontest, this could be bad.
Without trying to hunt too much upon NYXL's previous performances, it finally feels like NYXL have turned on their headsets and started listening to Kellen's calls. When we see Sparker get pile driven up in the air, a lot of fire is focused onto him, and he's in front of two supports. Admiral and Landon are both staring at Sparker, and while you can't spam those armor packs like you could before, Sparker should have been able to maybe survive that if someone else was able to do some peel, take some aggro, but NYXL focused fire so well, and now 3.5 minutes or thereabouts to try and get through this third point. This is where Poco's at his best on the Sigma, as we talked about before, but the overclock is still dangerous and needs to be feared by London Spitfire.
Ooh. And he was holding it, just saw Sparker, but only got a body shot. Sparker still has that top left position of Mega, And Poco's been playing so far forward. And just as soon as he sees New York, or mainly Kellen and Yaki go forward, Poco drops into the back. And New York have to be more aware of that. You see Flora already trying to zone off Poco. He's got the overclock going. He dodges the Gravitic Flux. Poco's still got one, but it's countered by the Transcendence of Myeongbong. Now Poco needs to maybe head back for the hills, maybe get some rally loving from Admiral, but London are holding it to the last second, and they picked away and poked away at Kellen. But New York haven't given up yet. They've nanoed Flora, still looking for any shots. London are just going to hide behind the shield of Poco and let him lead the charge. And through all these ultimates, New York got nothing.
You're exactly right, Lemon. Hiding behind the shield of Poco, they decided that Flora, Myeongbong, and Gangnam Jin were a problem for later, because Shaxx managed to get a stick onto Kellen on the engage, and Yaki moved in alongside Kellen, assuming it was going to be a two-man dive. But once Kellen was burst down and had fallen, Yaki found themselves in a 1 versus 4 scenario that could not be maintained. Now a Pulse Bomb in hand. If this goes on to land, remember he can save himself with the trance, but that would force London Spitfire into a forward engage to make good use of that healing.
Yaki is being really smart with how he's kind of stealthily trying to maneuver this long-range part of the map, but Poco is shot and has no shield. Landon's using Transcendence. Is this a fight that London can even take? I mean, they're just trying to maybe stabilize, maybe more of a tempo Transcendence, just to hold their position. They know how important that is for Sparker to have Mega Pack position against Flora. New York, though, are starting to close the gap when it comes to space. Yaki's in the back and has killed the Tracer. London are getting surrounded by New York, but Sparker, he fights back. He's got the overclock. He just killed the supports. And Kellen is 1 HP. He's heading for a pack. Flora will get his revenge. But New York are just running out of wind when it comes to their sails. And they just can't really bark back at London.
And that should have been the perfect fight there, Lemon, as well. Poco was instantly picked by a good pile driver, and once again, Focus Fire from NYXL, instantly evaporating that Sigma. There was no real main tank for London Spitfire to fall in behind while Landon used that Transcendence, but unfortunately, NYXL just ended up losing a couple of critical duels, and Sparker popped off with that overclock. Now, Shaxx, if he can deliver this Pulse Bomb into any waiting hands, NYXL are going to be forced to do this in one fight and one fight only.
New York are just going to brawl a bit. They have 40 seconds. They have the time to just finish off the ults that they do have, but Yaki's having issues just traversing just this long-range part of the map without getting sniped by London's defense that continue to dominate the high ground. New York are trying so hard to dislodge them from there, but they'll need ults to do it.
And this timing's worrying, Lemon, because now, if Shaxx gets an early pick with a Pulse Bomb, they're going to have to take the fight. NYXL no longer have the luxury of waiting. Kellen is going to be able to touch, of course. That's never going to be in question. But how do you try and make the dive work here when Yaki's under threat from Shaxx, who's just marking this other Tracer?
Well, Kellen did manage to get the pile drive. Poco responds with the Gravitic Flux. Nothing on that. So much mobility for New York to dodge that. Transcendence, Nano, and Overclock. Flora starts to dominate. He's already picked off 2. New York need to hold this top left position, and Poco's aware. He's trying to zone them off. He's been pushed back by Kellen, and Flora has killed 4 this fight to make it winnable. And New York will complete Route 66.
And finally, we see the Flora clutch factor. I was singing the praises of Kellen, and they are still relevant and still valid, but Flora coming up here as a real piece of danger on the NYXL. When we opened up this series, Lemon, I said that it felt like NYXL only had one player capable of clutching, and that was Yaki. That's how it felt when they were going up against Paris, when they lost against Paris. Paris's first win of the entire season was against the NYXL. At times it felt like Yaki was 1 versus 5, but now Yaki's playing more of a team-based role, just keeping Shaxx at bay, waiting for Kellen's call and diving in conjunction with Kellen, and it feels like Kellen as well is listening to Flora. Takes these dives on these pile drivers when the railgun is fully charged, so when they're stuck in the air from a pile driver, Flora hits the railgun, Yaki comes in and gets the finish. NYXL, the first time I can compliment them saying they're a team.
It's looking good, and I think that just Kellen able to initiate fights instead of stand there and depend on his DPS to do something. Kellen can kind of take matters into his own hands, and even his hand positioning is so great, just right in the center of the map, ready to react and pounce on anything that moves. So New York managed to finish the map, but we're in equal times. That's a 3-man ante, more just to slow London down from maybe going for any initial snipes, but London whipping out the same comp.
once again relying on this Brigitte. And it feels like the Brig hasn't done a great job thus far of like keeping Kellen or Yaki at bay. Of course, she no longer has the stun in her kit. Shield Bash now, I believe, has a knockback associated to it and a good amount of movement as well. Kellen not noted, and this will at least be a knockback to slow down the initial dive.
Yeah, Kellen's also keeping control of the top cave, somewhere where Poco would like to be, and even just access for Kellen into the backline. That's a good flail from Admiral to stop that from happening, maybe even a shield bash. He misses that, Kellen gets around the corner, and Anti gets landed dangerously low at the bulk of your heals. He gets packed up though, New York could capitalize on that moment. 8 seconds remaining, any mistake is going to matter. Landon has become pancakes, and Admiral is left as the only healer of London. They'll take the fight towards the cart. New York don't have any ultimates, but they just have to work together. Flores already sniped a Sparker. Admiral is gone. London have no heals. London are just sitting ducks to the assault of New York that has completely set Spitfire ablaze. And New York will hold Spitfire halfway to point A.
Even with a change of tact from a London Spitfire, having Admiral use the whip shot to interrupt Kellen's swings through and their potential to do additional damage with a 50 rolling knockback damage as well as the pile driver, London Spitfire was still harried into corners. And that means that while Admiral's using that whip shot on Kellen, yes, it's interrupting the overall dive, but it does mean that Yaki doesn't have to worry about it for the next couple of seconds, and the whip shot causes a significant amount of damage to a Tracer that is very hard to ignore. It has to either be healed up or potentially recalled away from, because you get into a zone where you can be one-shot by so many things, and it means that Yaki could do a lot more damage, stay in that fight for longer, and bring people low for everyone else to try and finish off.
I mean, how the turns have tabled. It feels like Flora is just winning all of these Sojourn duels against Sparker until Sparker maybe gets the better positioning in terms of maybe point C top truck. That's when Sparker has an easier time, but when it comes just to the raw mechanics on Route 66, we'll have to check with the stats, guys, but it feels like a Flora diff. So there's the box of victory for New York to tie up this series. But it was tough for London, and it'll be tough for New York with the same time bank.
London not going for any kind of spawn hold shenanigans. Feeling that this corner is more than enough for Poco to try and hold. But Poco, he's going to be a point of contention for a lot of fans, I think, after this particular map. 2 missed fluxes, Lemon. Not interrupted, missed. Which is very interesting when you're going up against 2 flex supports who have very little mobility. Already, of course, the cart is moving, and Kellen's playing a very reserved position at the moment, noting where London Spitfire are to try and set up these dives.
I'm surprised London want to hold top Earls when they should have more point presence, and Landon isn't safe. Admiral couldn't assure of that. Flora has already sniped him, and Admiral's shield's just not there. Shax at least is keeping the cart busy as Yaki hopes to get around it. Kellen is like 1 HP, and that would have been just a disaster for New York. Just the healing is just can't keep up from Youngrong and the Gundam Jin, who have been removed by Sparker, who's just killed 2. 5 seconds remaining for New York, and Kellen or Yaki has to touch. Yaki's already been just orbed by Poco on the high ground, but Yaki still manages to start the overtime. Kellen has to be next, and he gets there just in time. But is it enough? You've started overtime. Flora's there on the Reaper, the lethal close range, just to burst down Poco. Poco's Discord orbed, but Flora and Yaki just aren't there. Shax and Sparker, they come alive when London needs them the most. New York had a real chance to tie this series, and that is starting to slip away. I don't think London are missing a single person except maybe their Lucio, who's coming back, and it just doesn't matter. New York dead in the water, and London go to series point.
And NYXL just fumbled a 4 versus 5 as well. They had the perfect setup. The pile driver into the railgun. They evaporated Landon. He didn't exist. The Discord was gone. The Harmony Orb was gone. The entire Zenyatta was ruined. Had to even swap over to Volucio to even return in time. But Sparker and Shax, the European DPS combo, come up so clutch, Lemon. And this is what we need to see from London Spitfire as well. That they don't just need Huddy to be the difference maker. They can look to their damage players and say, hey, you're about to win us a game. And they bloody well did. London Spitfire do this by the skin of their teeth. And for NYXL, this is a heartbreaker that's going to need some repair in the break.
Hit my baby G-Shock, said it's time. All my thoughts linked up, multiplying, no divide. Dropping hit after hit, never miss. It's a crime, but my karma stay lit. Buddha sit by my side.
Sweating after that Route 66? Were you banking on New York's clutch factor? Well, it didn't happen, but it's okay because your pickups might be still okay. Make sure you get your predictions in to earn a chance to get some cash, some prizes, some skins, and share your fandom over on the Overwatch League mobile app that's on Google Play or the App Store. I know a lot of the desk were preferring or just predicting the London Spitfire here, so it looks like our Preds are okay for now.
grab your phone, Lemon, and settle down into my analysis grotto, because I want to tell you how Flora ended up getting 23 final blows on Route 66 versus Sparker's 13. Flora got so many more because it was actually a really good compositional read from NYXL. They looked at Poco on the Sigma and the separate backline of Admiral and Landon, and continuously the timing was get the railgun shot by shooting Poco's shield, and then have Kellen move in to do the pile driver so that while they're in the air, you get the easy railgun shot, and that meant you got so many more charged railgun shots out in general versus Sparker, who didn't have a shield to farm off with the Sojourn. And the question now for NYXL is, are they going to be able to do something similar when they're going up against Huddy? Because presumably he's going to be on the shield man himself on the Reinhardt, but there were a lot of problems for NYXL faced on Colosseo when going up against this lineup.
Huddy has occasionally brought out the Hammond when he needs it, but yeah, we're probably going to see the return of the Rush, especially with Backbone in. It just synergizes mainly with his Mei, and Backbone has also been seen playing Sombra, but I think they're kind of slowly getting rid of that because I don't know if they've even won a map with that. Nonetheless, yeah, the Flora versus Sparker matchup was really interesting because I had even said during the map, the few times that Sparker really did Flora was due to positioning, whether on the top of the point C truck or on top of Big Earls. And I had concerns with London just playing so far back when the box of victory was that close, and it ended up prevailing of getting above just having access to New York's backline. We go into mid-time, though, to see if London will have the clean sweep or are New York's upgrades and improvements going to actually help them.
London here going to be starting off on the attack, of course, and when Huddy comes in, we have come to expect one thing, Lemon, and this was actually the map where I think Huddy proved to a lot of the doubters in the kickoff clash that Reinhardt could work. And it was actually playing in a position where you currently see Myunbong hanging out. Trying to defend point B up close and personal with the Reinhardt is where London Spitfire really started to convince people that this identity as a Reinhardt rush team could be viable in Overwatch 2. On the other side, NYXL going to start defending now with Kellen on the Sigma. How are you going to stop yourself from being out-rotated here by London Spitfire? Because if Huddy can get on top of you with the aid of a Lucio, then you are going to be in deep trouble because you don't have anything in terms of knockbacks. Flora can escape, sure, Yaki can escape, but none of your tanks or supports can.
Yeah, this Metro just hurts the potential of Hammond so much. I think New York just would have looked better on that, but just not a ton. There still are grapple spots, but it's not as just high ground dependent as other maps. London will be free to push the alleyway on the left side. New York want to be as far away from London as possible, but against London, they're catching strays. As soon as they rotate, Flora got charged up his beam off of Hadi's shield, and Snipes landed before he could even put an Immortality down. So London put that dang in reverse. They put the whole cassette tape on rewind, but they're still losing more people.
Kellen falling down is a big problem, Lemon. He's going to take so long to respawn here. It takes so long to float back as a Sigma, and London Spitfire, they've basically already got their respawns in place up onto the high ground, but it looks like they're going to be counter-rotated here by Yaki. Flora's got a fully charged cannon, and that will do just fine.
Yeah, I'd say somebody needs to pressure this Sojourn, and I can't believe it was a Lucio that had to do it. You know, Hadi gets involved too. So, London able to approach the point. Yaki's in the back. Admiral's skating away. He's half HP. Hadi's there to protect him, but maybe just too late to be aware of Yaki's tracer. He's just going for melees. He recalls out of the charge. Now, that's some fancy feet, but how about we use these feet to touch the point, because it's already been a tick for Spitfire.
Just a flip of the map right here. Huddy's so far away, but Admiral's still in, hoping that Kellen's going to fall. And indeed, they could. So low, Lemon, and that's going to be the Immortality Field expended to keep everyone safe from this Pulse Bomb.
I'm already seeing YouTube chat just being like, oh, another Hadi shatter that gets nothing. But he gets those so quickly because he's always brawling something and using fire strikes. He's got 2 of them now. So you get those so quickly, you just shatter just to kill somebody. I will never hate Hadi for that. But there comes a fire truck. So London, they're going to take space.
And trying to hold this space if you're NYXL. It's a risk. Kellen at the moment, a little bit far forward, but this does at least provide like a 2-tier defense for NYXL that gives some safety over to Myeonbong and Gangnam Jin so that they can't be rotated to without Kellen being able to affirmatively move to protect as well. So I kind of like the double layer, the onion defense here from the NYXL. Flora with no opening pick, and you can see that often Admiral's the one aimed for because without the Lucio, London Spitfires can't get snooped.
Oh, Kellen uses Graphics just to float out of the danger zone because he was getting walled off by Backbone. And then London get weakened, and New York had already Yaki on the window high ground where Kellen currently is, so Yaki was ready to pounce on any opportunity. They managed to pick off Backbone, so without Admiral and Backbone, London don't have speed, and they don't have their win con or their neutral win con of the May wall, so London are going to take a second.
And the question here is, now that Kellen's up on the high ground, having got there via that Gravitic Flux, does London Spitfire make the move to force him out, or do they try and force Kellen to play solo on this side and have an undefended backline? Looks like they're going for the backline instead.
Oh, it's not cancelled. He threw the Blizzard, though. He got a headshot during it. Flora assuring of that. The Amp Matrix to help New York just get a little bit more damage through the Blizzard, and London completely wiped away. So that did not work out.
And NYXL, now they can maintain this crossfire with Kellen on that high ground because while they may have used one of the things to stop London Spitfire making that commute in the Amplification Matrix, they also have the Overclock and the Transcendence as well. Here's Yaki's POV in the replay, finding Sparker, of course, utilizing that leftover Amp Matrix. It was completely unaccounted for by London, but I think at that point they knew this fight was a wash.
Oh, Hottie? He's trying to sweep away this high ground. He got a good charge, but the Transcendence just pushes him right back. Great resources from New York and trying to get picks off of the Overclock. The Immortality was in the way. No longer. Landon's gone too. London have just no heals and should just be heading for a safe place, and they'll do so underground. But now New York are starting to take angles around them. Hottie's going to go for a shatter. He gets 3 on the floor. Kellen, Youngblood, and Gangnam Jin are down, and that's what happens when you corner an animal.
Sometimes you just get that Howdy Beast magic, baby. And it's striking true today. Sparker now with an Overclock combined with an Amplification Matrix. If London Spitfire can control the forward ground here and make sure that they have supremacy over the high ground, there's going to be nowhere for NYXL to hide when it comes to fighting for this objective. So NYXL, they need to get onto the high ground as soon as possible to dislodge London.
Oh, Kellen is just getting his shield shredded. He has none. He has the safety of the barricade at the end of point B. New York have a Grav Flux. This will initially get London low. They don't have any support else to say anything about it. The Grav Flux is focused on the Hottie, which will, I think it even maybe got canceled. I didn't see Hottie take that much damage, but it's Sparker that I want to look at. He's already killed the supports, and he's looking for more. London have scooped away this fight in front of New York, pulling the trigger first.
I love the double phase fight there, Lemon. The first being the Amplification Matrix, just forcing NYXL to hide away from the cart while it rolled into a finishing position. And then Sparker gets up close and personal, leaving Landon on the high ground to freely heal from a untouched position while the Overclock was active. NYXL, they all had to feed themselves into the crosshairs of Sparker. There was no more option to hide. Now how he controls the high ground, it's an odd location for a Reinhardt, but one that needs to be thoroughly contemplated by the NYXL in terms of knocking him off of here somehow. You can't let him just exist here.
It's fine because he's just trying to take that high ground from Flora or Yaki, so they don't have access to Admiral and Landon. So London just get to hover here and push cart. Now if New York get cart presence and London still have the high ground, they can jump from above and just squash them. So Hottie eventually drops. It's about rounding the corner. They'll have sound barrier soon. Hottie's getting aggressive. He's depending on that. Admiral will assist. Hottie has another shatter, and there's already 2 dead of the defense. The Amp Matrix rises from Gangnam Jin, but you're not seeing any trades come up. Hottie's in trouble though. He has no shield, half health, sniped by Flora. London can still keep this going because they have a Blizzard. Kellen's contesting with like 2 HP. He knows he's the only thing standing between London and a full capture with the time that they have. New York have respawn advantage. They can turn this fight around before Hottie gets back, but it has to happen quickly.
Oh, Landon takes an aggressive peek there, and Myeonbong's going to punish it with the right click. Yes, Admiral can just force in this cart a little bit more, but it's going to be easily... Wait, Flora's been taken down. Now Kellen has to touch and could be slams, Lemon.
New York just stood there stabilized instead of taking a fight. You used the shatter to lock down Kellen. No tanks, no Flora. 5-on-3. A Blizzard near the doorway that New York want to contest from. It's a Transcendence from Youngblood that keeps not only himself but Yaki alive. Flora distances himself from the Blizzard and sees if he can pick away at Hadi. But Kellen and there's just no one there to contest. It's mainly on Kellen, and he only got back now. So Spitfire will cap 40 seconds on the clock.
That was a really weird minute and a half of play right there. At least it's less than a minute. That's good news for NYXL. It means that if they can full cap Midtown in overtime, they won't be just playing for a draw and playing to survive and try and get a 6-map reverse sweep. However, a full completion on Midtown is nothing to turn your nose up at. And now London Spitfire, this is where they're at their strongest, Lemon. On the defense, able to control how these engagements happen, able to sit up on the high ground like a panther waiting in the trees in order to just drop down on top of a more vulnerable NYXL.
It feels like London are taking the initiative in a lot of these fights, and New York know how to capitalize. So when they do just get that one pick, if New York's DPS get one pick, it forces London to play scared because every component of the rush provides some important utility for it to be successful. Whether it's they pick off Admiral, whether they get rid of Backbone, and then New York are really good at those 5-on-4 fights. They don't stand still, but they do stand still at point C where they killed Hadi and they just stood in their spawn when maybe you could have taken more time off of that clock. Maybe you could have taken more space, but it's so hard to hold that space while utilizing a Hammond. Surprised to see this now on the attack. We'll see if that Metro kind of geometry is going to be difficult for Kellen to maneuver. We don't see Hammond on this map too often.
I think the Wrecking Ball might be here, Lemon, to try and distract London Spitfire a bit. Just get Kellen on top of that point, force back some London Spitfire members to try and keep it contested, which allows Myunbong and Gangnam Jin to make a less accosted commute forward, because there's no real way to stop London Spitfire getting on top of your supports at the moment.
Yeah, so Kellen goes above the Metro instead of under, and he got booped away from Admiral on his pile drive. So that's going to be difficult. That's a pretty short cooldown to have the boop. And New York thought they had space to just kind of start creeping up on the subway. They forced the Backbone ice block, which is a minor window of opportunity for New York to start taking up space, knowing that Backbone's going to have to play safer. There's the May wall there for Backbone to stop Kellen from moving around on the bottom of your screen, as Yaki takes advantage of that distraction that you mentioned to go after the supports. Now Yaki's putting some initial good damage in, and it's poked down by Myunbong. So we're waiting for New York to really get on this point, and it's tough when Hadi's going on a date with Kellen in the backline.
Look at where Hadi was. Hadi's the one who took the bait when Kellen touched the point. You can't have your main tank off merrily Benny hill chasing this enormously more mobile Wrecking Ball. That's how Hadi ended up over here, and that means who's defending the majority of London Spitfire? They're sitting ducks from the poke that comes through from NYXL, which is so much greater because London Spitfire, they're relying on a Lucio and a Mei for poke as well as the BAP and the Sojourn.
There's no one from London even contesting it. It's just tough for New York to have point presence as it is. And Kellen now has to deal with Hadi, who just is going to continuously primary fire at him. So Kellen has to leave and help out on the battle as London were just taking staircase control, and Kellen squashes it. So London are missing 2, and it's just about taking time off the clock because this is just not winnable for London.
Yeah, London there. Too easily distracted by Kellen. Ooh, shiny ball. Migo follow. Can't follow in this case. I would have loved to have seen maybe Backbone or potentially even Admiral go after the Wrecking Ball and try and just make sure that point was contested. You can kill Kellen later. What you can't do is expose yourself to New York Excelsior's poke now. And NYXL, they're rolling into this next fight, Lemon, on point B with 5 ultimates, which is super important because this is where London can hold the best. I wouldn't mind seeing all 5 ultimates used here.
Oh, Amp Matrix from the high ground of Landon and London. No, it's hard to say, but Kellen's trying to push them off and throws them into the corner, so it stops them from temporarily using the Amp Matrix as the rest of New York, as Kellen was pushing people forward, and the rest of New York squashed them from the front. So pretty good fight.
I said I wouldn't mind NYXL using all 5 ultimates to break through his first area and deny it from Hadi. They didn't have to use any. An early pick from Flora was all that was needed, and Landon actually embraced the Amp Matrix there as well. NYXL, they are still going to be cut in 2 here, as they still have some respawn to a returning. Hadi's got to hit a fat slam here, a Sparker. They're going to be the one to finally pay attention to that objective rather than Hadi, letting him stay with the team and play as a unit.
Yeah, pushing card is just not safe for anyone from New York except Kellen, and he's trying to push London off the high ground. Hadi commits another shatter just for Kellen. Flora gets in the way. Myungwon uses Transcendence to maybe save people through the shatter engage, but it's too little too late with the close range burst that shatter has. Kellen is gone, and there's the fight back from New York. They nano Flora, who's using overclock. He uses the Maywall from his opposition to actually get a vantage point on the London Spitfire members on the high ground, and New York are turning this fight despite losing Kellen so early.
Sparker still going to be double-pocketed though, has to make a decision, stand and fight or run away, and given the proximity of the spawn of Backbone and Hadi, is decided that discretion is the better part of Valor. However, Kellen can very much control the area around this cart as it comes in towards the finish, using those mines. For Backbone, the question is, can they get this Blizzard on top of the supports?
Oh, New York thought they were safe on the high ground, but no one scouted their flank. The Blizzard right on top of those supports. Myungbong is dead, but Gangnam Jin lives, and New York have some saving grace, but the duplicate from Yaki did absolutely nothing. London are still hanging around the high ground, and Sparker forces Yaki out of the duplicate, so New York don't really have a leg to stand on, and they're being so passive despite, you know, killing London, and then just immediately giving up space and just taking so long for these engages to start.
Yaki overall there had a good idea in being able to use the wall to defend the frozen members in the Blizzard on the copy, but unfortunately it was just easily broken through. Flora just randomly dies to a Fire Strike. He must have been LOSing Gangnam Jin. The formation of NYXL is in ruins, Lemon. I think Hadi may have gone for a little bit of a type there or something, or a quick DC. It's okay. Make sure that route is plugged in.
Yeah, just questioning the Orisa now, questioning what New York are doing. Minute 30 left.
No Orisa, question mark? No more? NYXL, low on ultimates, low on sieging power here. At least they have their inherent high ground. Hadi's already moving in.
Does the Pseudos New York think they're safe and just moving forward? London just immediately jumped down, and we've already taken note of this before, of London's initiative. They're so good at starting fights on their terms, and New York always have to play reactive, and that might not suit their playstyle.
All right, now we're playing the more aggressive style that I've come to expect from Hadi, and I love how they're already checking Kellen, because the only way that you easily break this hold at the chokes is to have Kellen once again go in, touch the cart, and force London Spitfire to move towards you.
Oh, London almost had a quick push. Isolation wall. New York using their cooldowns to move away. Hadi is slept, but immediately woken there by Kellen. As New York have the mines if they want to use it as their own isolation tool, because Yaki needs the space to operate. Hadi shatters Kellen. The Nano's invested just to keep Kellen alive. He has the mines available, and Kellen's so all up in there. At least he helps kill Hadi. Landon's barely alive, so New York, they're finally aggressive, and it's paying off, but now they have 10 seconds to go to cart, and they probably have to win one more fight for point B.
At least it was only the nano used there, but yes, the cart has been rolling backwards steadily throughout the midst of all of this, Lemon. The question is, how do London Spitfire try and control the high ground? You need to get Myungbong, Gangnam Jin and Flora off of there, so the speed boost and maybe even a sand barrier engage could be useful.
It's just about brawling, and London, they go on the flank to try and dislodge New York's DPS from this high ground, and Backbone's been forced to use Ice Block, and Flora's in a position. He counter-rotates away from London. He's overclocking. He's charged up, beefed up, and ready to serve. And London, they throw the Blizzard, but barely have anybody on the cart. So New York, they counter-rotate and push point B and tap.
Oh, my mistake. I thought it was a beat that was died midway through by Admiral, but I think it did come out in the end. Just an unfortunate ragdoll, but London Spitfire there, they made the move to try and contest for high ground, and they didn't quite get there. NYXL still left it, but it did mean that they couldn't set up Sparker and Landon to have that wraparound from the back to continuously provide pressure onto the exposed underbelly of the NYXL. Because it's not just removing NYXL from the high ground, it's taking it for yourself. Now we get to the Grand Central Terminal. Hadi can play these 90-degree angles very well with the Reinhardt, but you can't really challenge the high ground. And if Myungbong and Gangnam Jin can get up there unperturbed, it should be free heals until they get stopped by Sparker.
Well, Flora couldn't get up there yet. He missed his jump. Yaki's going to fly above just to get some initial damage in. See if it's the time to fight. Yaki has the Reinhardt duplicate. You have less health, though, on the new Echo duplicate, so he doesn't have a lot of time to live. He's very close to Shatter. He has it now. He swings on Admiral, and Hadi blocks the Shatter, but he's discorded and has no shield. So Hadi, how long will he live? Well, pretty well against Yaki with less health and removed out of duplicate form, and Sparker, with the overclock, is heading for more stagger kills. New York are trying to hide, and they're doing a good job of doing so, but they're panicking. They've nanoed Flora, who walks into a Shatter, but because of the pile drive from Kellen, he almost could have lived, but it's too little and too late. Sparker has found the diff. New York have to get to the end of the map or they will lose the series, and London are in a perfect position to end this series the way that it should have in the first place. They got low on Route 66, but man, Sparker is done playing with this food, and New York have the touch. Yaki's back on the Tracer, and he's confusing London, but it's not enough. New York will not complete the map, and London will take the series 3-0.
A nano target slammed to sleep. We call that one a power nap. Lemon in London have certainly forced NY Excelsior into a dirt nap on their home map of Midtown. We saw flashes of brilliance, understanding of the comps from NYXL. It certainly feels like they have the overall intelligence, more so than before, to like really exploit the kind of comps that they're going up against, but just not the clutch factor to beat out players like Sparker, like Backbone, like Hadi. When it comes to these 1 versus 1s, London, they play their own game, they play their own tempo, and the crescendo of overall value that London Spitfire have, which is bringing them towards mid-season madness, is surely going to be getting them into that next tournament.
I mean, yeah, London are going to stick to their identity and make little improvements. And one of them, going from Soldier towards the meta, and that's our Sojourn player, is our player of the match. It's Sparker from the London Spitfire, who just decimated New York Excelsior on Coliseum. It just wasn't close. Route 66 had a more interesting battle, but Sparker has adapted through the meta, starting with Cassidy in his first matches to just owning on the Sojourn.
I mean, Sojourn's kind of like the dream character for someone like Sparker, who when we first were introduced to Sparker Lemon back in 2018, 2019, they were a Widow specialist for British Hurricane. They were just bought in for maps like Gibraltar and Dorado to play the flick scan snipers. But now, playing things that Sparker's also really good at, like the Soldier. For Tracer, utilizing that tracking with the primary fire of Soldier and then being rewarded with additional snipes. This is the conflux of mechanics where Sparker is able to utilize his entire skill set, and he's been doing so well in this matchup.
And London are also utilizing more of the rest of their roster. We kind of thought they were just so one-dimensional at the start of the stage. We're like, where's Poco? People even forgot Poco was on this team when I told them about it. And now that we're in a Sigma meta, Poco gets to finally have some time to shine, and Shaxx is more consistently used now that Tracer's so important to get put pressure on those flex supports now that they're in the meta. So I've been liking just the new looks we're seeing from London. And like you said, they're playing their game, but when it comes to New York, they're still trying to figure out their game. But we saw glimpses of what could work for New York, which is playing around Kellen's engage on the Hammond, but Hammond's not good on every map, and you saw kind of how difficult that was specifically on Midtown. And if Yaki sticks to more Tracer, I think he's going to have better mobility to constantly be ready to help Kellen instead of flying up in the air and then having to wait so long to engage again. So much better of a fan of Yaki's Tracer.
That said, with NYXL, I'd rather they try and put a ball-shaped key into a square hole than languish on a meta that they aren't quite good at. And I think that we have seen flashes of not terrible from NYXL today, which sounds cruel, but it is positive news for NYXL fans. Kellen is looking like an Element Mystic tank and is being followed up by Flora. There is a basis to build on there, but they might have to go up against some weaker teams to try and get that next win. And well, while we aren't going to be seeing any more of London today or NYXL, there are plenty more Overwatch matches coming after this break.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Upper Deck, the official trading card of the Overwatch League. And by TeamSpeak, the official voice supplier of the Overwatch League.
Welcome to Game Break, everybody. I'm here with Sparker from London Spitfire. Sparker, congratulations on the win and also getting the player of the match as well.
Thank you,
first
Dan.
match 3-0 for the London Spitfire, and you guys are just killing it this stage. How did you guys prepare for today's match against the New York Excelsior?
We fought since that last week our Ryan Mirror versus Toronto. We'd think they would be too scared to take the Ryan Mirror since we're just that good. So we thought they would have to go anything full spam. So we just prepared for that as well as we could.
Okay, and yeah, and it worked out. I don't know. Did you feel like playing that match? Did you feel like they were scared of the London Spitfire, like you mentioned? Did you get that feeling playing New York Excelsior today?
Not really. I think they tried their hardest, and it was a tough match.
They tried that.
Fainted.
Right. Yeah, and I also want to talk a little bit about your Sojourn. You, of course, got the player of the match, and I picked you. I wanted to talk to you because you just popped off today. What are your thoughts on Sojourn currently? Do you think Sojourn is going to be like a long time stay in the meta sort of hero, or do you think it's just for now, like a hero that would just, maybe for a stage or two?
If they don't nerf her, I think she's unreal broken right now. Probably the best hero in this meta. So if you can hit shots, I think she's just a game changer, and you can win games alone if you hit enough heads.
Yeah, quick cuts, win games. All right, I will take note. Probably I won't be able to do that, but hey, you can do it. That's why you're a player and I'm not. All right, and my final question for you, Sparker, is, I think I said this briefly. You guys are just on fire these days. London Spitfire has been performing very well, even start of the season, but I think going into stage 2 and right now in this stage, I think you guys are really popping off. Where does your success lie in? Where do you think that you're finding success in? Is it thanks to the meta, or is it just you guys are just really, really good?
Of course, we have really good players this year, but with our new coaching staff, I think we prepare really well every week and just more prepared than ever for every match. And it goes well.
All right, Sparker, thank you. Thank you so much for all those wonderful answers, and again, congratulations on the win.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sparker. Congratulations to the London Spitfire. Another W on the board. That was hard to get there, but
I
know, right? It's rough. It's really rough out there. Let's discuss how they got it done. We did see a few moments from the New York Excelsior, where it almost looked like they could get themselves back into the game, but just not quite. Where did they fall short, and how did London Spitfire come out on top?
I think the rush, no one's really been able to solve the rush composition from the London Spitfire except for the Gladiators in the kickoff clash. Like, that really seems like the only team that has ever been able to crack it since they've had that confidence. New York Excelsior were no different. They really struggled on, the first and the third map where they had the chatty in. Just the ability for them to maneuver around the map. They tried Orisa, which, I'm not in love with, but it was something different. Something to sort of mix it up and try and change how the London Spitfire were playing the game, but they just couldn't deal with it. And then, there was some positive signs on Route 66 that we saw here with Kellen on that wrecking ball. They have Flora absolutely going crazy on that Sojourn. It did look cohesive and it looks like it should work for them. And in the New York Excelsior, if you look at their players on paper, they got Yaki on Tracer, they got Flora popping off on the hit scan, Myeonbong is able to go over to the flex support, Gangnam Jin is also off of that Lucio onto more of his comfort picks. This should be good for the Excelsior, and it was...
We say that every week.
We say it every week.
We say that every week. Come on.
It looks cohesive, at least. At least it looked a little bit better. It looked like some form of improvement when they were able to play those heroes, but once again, another disappointing loss for New York Excelsior.
Yeah, I mean, we saw last week even in this meta with how good Sojourn is, and also, some of these Tracer players like Yaki, for example, they can take over games, like Sparker said, right? So that's sometimes what we even saw. Toronto Defiant last week, they looked awful, but then Hisu was like, yeah, I'm gonna win this map, and he just decided to shoot people down. So you definitely can get some wins here. New York Excelsior and Route 66, they looked good. Like, as we said, the composition, they fit them. Flora looked amazing on the Sojourn, on Route 66. So they are like, a team punching upwards and like trying to steal some of these maps. But when you're like a wrecking ball team, and then you're like, can you try to win on Colosseo and Midtown? It's like, not the best maps for the wrecking ball. So it did look good on Route 66, and I do think that New York Excelsior could build on this performance somewhat. But it's getting a bit boring to say, really. So, the map's got to be in their favor, and maybe Flora popped off.
It's getting old. I do wonder, though, as we were on that first map and we did see that Orisa coming at, I don't know which of you two mentioned that or tried to talk about it, and the Mei. Is that a response to the Mei?
It makes a little bit of sense. Maybe not so much now that you can't get permanently frozen by the Mei left click, but in the past, Fortify was very good against that because you could just hit the Fortify, walk out of the Mei Blizzard, walk out of the freeze, and then you could live. Maybe that's the logic there. Maybe they didn't read the patch notes again. It's hard to really know. It did not work. Orisa just doesn't do anything better than Reinhardt or Sigma. So that's just the reality of it.
To be fair, I feel like you could say that about like every hero. You could be like, oh, they're playing Orisa. Let's go Tracer.
Yeah.
They're playing Orisa. Let's go Junkrat. Like, every hero can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, you can always make it work if you're just very good. Yeah. Like, there is that. Speaking of very good, we got two teams popping up next, and that's the Florida Mayhem and the Dallas Fuel. Don't think Dallas is living up to the expectations we're currently having from them. That's what actually potentially could make this game a very close one, as they are currently still winless in this stage. Reinforce, what do they need to do to get the W today?
Honestly, just live up to like the players' talent. No, honestly, they were so disorganized last week. Like, they didn't know what composition to play. They swapped heroes way too often, map to map. They're just like, yeah, we're gonna play Hanzo, we're gonna play a little bit of Sojourn, Tracer, we're gonna play Doomfist comps, Winston comps, Sigma compositions. Like, they played everything, right? So Dallas Fuel just like settle on one thing and try to make it work. And really, I think you can build on that thing instead, rather than just trying to adapt all the time. You gotta be wary of Hydran in this matchup. One of the best Sojourns we have in the league, right? But I just want to see Dallas Fuel come out and look like they actually have a plan in place, instead of trying to adapt every single team fight and flex around to a bunch of different heroes. Like, no, you have great players. Just make them comfortable and then just go in and be confident.
Yeah, absolutely. So
is that too simple?
Confidence. We need them to have a proper game plan, because we know they have the individual skill to get it done over the Florida Mayhem. But let's see, Costa, you were rooting for the Mayhem here. You already said your piece, so let's see how this one is going to go down. And for the action, we're going to send it over to, what shall we call that pairing? Ubos or Jobber?
Jabber.
Jubber. I like that. Let's go with Jubber. Jabber?
Jabber.
Jabber. Work in progress.
Johnny's my spirit animal. I mean, his reaction is absolutely mine there. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Overwatch League. I'm Mitch Leslie, here with Jaws, who has his Picasso jumper on today in honour of this partnership. Great to be here with you, mate. Obviously, we've got a very interesting match to first put under the microscope here because we've got a team who is winless, and I don't mean in series, I mean in maps so far in this qualifier.
How is this possible? I mean, I'm the biggest Dallas Fuel sip going, but like, how are you 0 maps? Okay, look, you played against the Shock, you played against the Atlanta Reign.
Yeah.
Kai exists as a human being in a server in Overwatch, which is great, and he kills everybody. That's like definitely the hardest matchup they've had so far. And then Shock have like Kilo and Prop, in fact, their whole roster, which is also insane. And then they had Mikey come in and play Wrecking Ball, which is also really good. Like, it's kind of understandable, but you don't expect that from the Dallas Fuel at all. You expect them to at least get 1 or 2 maps, but like a big fat 0 is just absurd right now. Like, and then 5 and 3. Like, how is this possible?
I want to scratch the surface of that a little bit when we start talking about them a bit more, because there's some reasons for this, at least we feel. The Florida Mayhem, though, I kind of like Johnny gave us a prelude here to look out for Hydron, right? It definitely, I think he's like 3rd in a lot of the key stats on this hero so far. But I mean, Jack, he was incredibly impactful last week as we saw the Mayhem pivot to a different style, along with many other teams in the league.
Yeah, Hydron's been crazy good. And you want to see this from rosters like the Mayhem, who had a very big shift in their their entire roster coming into this year. And they've also added players here and there too. They had Kariv come in because Sir Marchev was like struggling with visa stuff, and then Kariv's obviously taken a step back. They've had Sir Marchev come in. They've also had RuPaul coming into the roster too, and you're like, wow, okay, this it's a slow burner roster, 100%. Like, they're going to get better throughout the season. But then Hydron just comes out of the gate swinging on the Sojourn. He's one of the scarier ones. And like you were saying, Mitch, with the he's up there in terms of stats-wise. Like, and you expect almost the Dallas Fuel to be that way because they also have, Sparkle, Edison, Gurio too, who have, like, an crazy depth of heroes that they can play within Overwatch right now. But then I don't know, man. I'm confused. I'm annoyed, and this game is going to tilt me if Mayhem just 3-0 because the Dallas Fuel on paper should be a lot better than this. Look, they had 1 loss coming into this qualifying tournament, and you're expecting Mayhem to be kind of this middle of the pack team, but now Fuel are middle of the pack. London's like gone up through the stratosphere. Like, I'm just confused.
Right. I mean, okay, let's go at a level further than that, right? Because I think we're looking at Sojourn players on this Dallas Fuel team and wondering who that is supposed to be. Because we've seen Edison, we've seen Gurio, of course, in here at Hitscan, but neither of those have really rocked our world. Fearless is going to be in the starting roster today, but it definitely feels like the tank line is a little bit in flux with this Fuel team, as well as the Sojourn player. Who are the go-tos on this Dallas Fuel roster? We need to see them today, Jack.
Yeah, we do. And that point of the tanks being a little bit confused, it also feels that way since the beginning of these qualifiers, because we've seen Fearless come in and play some Doomfist. You're like, okay, fine, you can flex the Doomfist, whatever. You can obviously play the Winston too. I wouldn't say exactly the same style, but it's like go in with Slam and, you know, go in with Lead with Monkey. So it kind of fits the same kind of niche in terms of tanks. But then you also have Hanbin coming out on Reinhardt, and you're like, what? Like, is this just a mid-map adaptation? Like, okay, we don't have Fearless in, but we need to play Ryan right now. Like, this other team's kind of clobbering us with it. It just feels weird. They're a little bit all over the place. And for the Dallas Fuel backline, I think they've been the most consistent, like, for sure. Shio has been crazy good, a rookie coming into this year. I think a lot of people didn't have high up on their radar. Maybe a few people did here and there, but he has been one of the standout pieces for the Fuel, being a real backbone for the team, which is honestly what you need right now, because it's a lot of solo play in this meta, like the Tracers and the Sojourns, finding off angles, finding picks on the support. If you have those support line, if you have the support line that just doesn't die and just survives for a long time, that's normally for the better. And Chio and Field are at least doing that.
I like you bring that up because on the Mayhem side of things, right, so Margib was someone we praised so highly in our kickoff Clash tournament, right? But when we've seen him move to Zen, and sometimes the Brig has been in this case, seeing him pop up on the kill feed as the first elimination a little more. He's playing aggressively, so we see his Zen play also able to yield his team some of those first kills, but it's been more volatile than what we saw from him on the Iana, which seemed a little more stable. So that's something worth keeping an eye on as this series sort of goes here. As we also feel maybe moving away from some of his go-to flex support heroes, Jack. Right out of the gates, though, it's going to be Fearless on the Wrecking Ball here. Dallas have the real rush down play with the Moira in tow.
Yeesh. I don't like the Moira here. I'm going to be very honest. Like, your effective range of healing on the Moira is pretty slim unless you throw the Orb out to chase the Tracer, to chase the Sojourn or whatever, but you're also not really healing ball that much. Like, I don't know. It feels way better if you're playing the Zen or you're playing the Brigitte in this instance. Someone's on the Doomfist, so a slight change, but look at Village just getting completely bullied. The Lamb just does so much in this comp.
Yeah, look at Fielder. I mean, he had his fade forced so early in the fight. Someone was just able to follow him up, clean him up indeed. Someone going to flatten Gurio here, and Dallas Fuel get absolutely Goomba stomped in his first fight.
Yeah, I mean, well, oh no, they use their fade. Well, I guess we kill Fielder now because he can only use one orb, has a little bit of self-heal with the right click, but that's about it. And well, what does RuPaul do? Oh, there's a really cool ability that maybe should be an ultimate called Lamp that makes you immortal.
Oh, it's got a long
sick.
cooldown though, Jack. It's very balanced. It's lengthy.
True.
It's like 18 seconds just sat there without immortality. You know, so how do you survive?
I will say though, Fade is one of the most powerful abilities in the game. In vulnerability, you're invisible, you get speed boost, and you get a jump. So, but if you fade that, if you force that out, you die so quick in Overwatch 2. It's kind of kind of a whatever.
How about the whip shot there, which sent Fearless back down to the low ground and gave Hydron their space to just pick Sparkle out. Again, we're seeing these Tracers fall up against Sojourners. I mean, that instant kill potential with the rails, so punishing. Gurio, though, at least is able to respond here. The Mayhem are now down a player.
Ooh, yeah, rough stuff. Yeah, if you have someone dying super early on the fight like that, the Mayhem really can't do a whole bunch. Like, check out Hydron. Yeah, they're pretty mobile, but you need to have someone in the front line just causing a distraction, forcing cooldowns out of Fielder and Chio. And now Fielder switching over to the Ana. We got to kind of mention that. Way better for this kind of comp. Like, you're nanoing Fearless. The bio grenades are absolutely huge, especially on people like someone who's now switched over to Zarya. Okay, I was going to say good for Doomfist, but